everyone, it's been a little while since I've been off trail and I decided it's definitely time for me to do my gear video. I wanted to put one together before I started the trail, but I didn't really get the time, so instead I'm putting this video together. I'm going to try and talk through all the different gear I had, why I switched it, if I switched it, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and hopefully that'll give you a little bit of insight into what I was using. I'm going to try and go through each piece, but some of it I'll skim past if it's pretty boring or straightforward. So this is the pack I was using when I was on the AT. It's a Raingear Kumo, which is a 36 litre pack, and it's completely frameless. When I first started out on the trail, I was using a Z-Lite sleeping mat, and I folded that up and put it into these pouches to act as the frame. Then when I switched to an inflatable sleeping pad, I just had two sections of Z-Lite in here as a frame, and then as I continued on the trail, I got rid of that altogether and just packed my pack in a way that meant that there was a smooth surface against my back, and that worked really well. I really liked this pack. I think it's about 28 litre internal volume, and then the rest of the volume in this very large mesh pocket at the front and the side pouches. It also has the mesh pockets on the straps and a hip belt, which I used all of those pockets every single day. I really loved this pack, and I'm going to keep using it for quite some time, I hope. I have actually broken the buckle on the sternum strap, but I've gone online onto the Raingear website and ordered a replacement for that, and that's on its way at the moment. I also use a pack liner inside my pack. This is just a Cedar Summit dry bag, Ultra Sil, and I use this inside my pack as pack liner instead of using a trash bag or something like that. It's very lightweight and I trust it more. I'm less likely to punch holes in it than a garbage bag. I don't use a pack cover at all when it's raining, so this really is what's keeping all my things dry. I used two different tents during my time on the AT. The first is one I started with. This is a tarp tent Aeon Lee. It is one of their newest tent models. It's a DCF single wall pyramid style tent. It's a one-man tent and it weighs in at about a pound. It came in at 520 grams on my scale, including tent stakes and everything. It does have internal struts in it, so this is the length of those struts, and so it's a little bit awkward to pack up. I carried it in the external pocket, one of the side pockets of my pack, and that worked really well for me. I've also since then experimented with packing it inside my pack, and that worked equally well. I really enjoyed this tent in the time that I was using it. I did have a few problems very early on with splashback, but I learned how to pitch the tent better in order to avoid that. Condensation was never an issue for me. I never had any dripping of condensation or anything like that. Of course, you do get condensation inside the tent, but I think that the tent manages it really well. After I started walking with Raiden more, we switched to a two-man tent, and this is my half of the two-man tent. It's a Lanshan two-person tent. The best description of this is a double wall sil nylon knockoff of a duplex. I carried the inner and he carried the fly. This comes in actually at about 560 grams. So switching to the two-man tent actually meant that I was carrying a heavier tent, but at the same time I got to use a two-man tent and share that space and that weight with Raiden. And it really did make things easier switching into a two-man tent. This tent I bought in 2018 when I was on the PCT, when I needed a new tent. It cost me $115, that's US dollars, and that was with express shipping from China. So I thought that was a really good price for a tent. And then I actually used it for say 40 or 50 nights on the Pacific Crest Trail, and then about 100 nights on the Appalachian Trail. By the end of that, we were having some issues with it. There was a couple of holes which were very small. We had some splashback issues with this as well, but that was more of a site selection thing. Where the side guy lines attached, there was definitely a spot where it was leaking through there. And then on our very last night on trail at the Birches, we broke the zipper. So this tent is pretty much rubbish now, but for $100 Chinese tent, I think it did really, really well on trail. For my sleep system on trail, I started out with a Thermarest Zeolite sole. This was cut down from the regular size, so it was only 6 sections long. And I'd used a similar thing the whole way through the PCT and it was great. But as soon as I started on the AT, I found that I had condensation issues between the lower portion of my sleeping bag, between my knees and feet, which weren't on the mat, and I was waking up with a wet sleeping bag in the morning. So pretty early on in the trail, I ended up switching to the Thermarest Neo Air Uberlite. It's about 250 grams, which is, I don't know how many ounces, and it's an inflatable sleeping mat. I found it really, really comfortable. It was a lot quieter than the X-Lite, which a lot of people use, the yellow one. I did find that in order to pack it into its bag, they want you to divide it into thirds, but that was too much pain, so I just folded it in half and rolled it up and put it into my pack without being in the bag. I did have some issues with it at one point. Something happened and one of the baffles burst, so that 2 of the baffles formed into one large baffle, and then that progressively got worse, so I had a giant lump on the pad which was made of 5 baffles combined together. But I returned it to REI and got a replacement, so still really like this sleeping pad. I also used Cedar Summit pillow. I use this pillow for years now. I can't sleep without a pillow, and I definitely consider it as an item that I always bring. I also always use a silk sleeping bag liner. I started the trail with exactly the same as this, but an old one. I ended up ripping through that in several places, and so on the trail I replaced it with the exact same thing again. I find that using a sleeping bag liner means that I have a nicer area to sleep in. I can get muddy inside my sleeping bag liner and pop this in the wash, and it also helps my sleeping bags from not getting too stinky. I used several different sleeping bags when I was on trail. I started off with this guy. This is an Enlightened Equipment Revelation quilt. It's a 10-degree Fahrenheit quilt. It's really warm. I used it for most of the PCT last year, and it was good to start off with this on the Appalachian Trail when it was still quite cold out. I then switched to my homemade sleeping bag. This is a synthetic one. I thought I would use this for the majority of the trail because I didn't have to worry about the synthetic getting wet or anything like that. And this provides me with a pretty good temperature rating. I've used it in cold summer conditions in New Zealand, and I thought it'd be really useful. But then while I was on trail, Raiden was looking at getting a warmer sleeping bag, a cooler sleeping bag, a sleeping bag for warmer weather. We were both very warm, and we ended up switching to these, which are a very lightweight down throw. These ones are from QVC, but they also sell the similar product from Costco. This weighs less than a pound, and it was very compressible, which I found really nice on trail. It kept my bag nice and small, compact, and it was really nice. And I actually picked this up, I don't know where, Shenandoah. I started using this in the Shenandoahs and continued all the way through the end of the trail. So even when the trail started cooling down towards the end, I used this through the whites where it was cold enough for our breath to rise and steam inside, and I used it right up until the end at Katahdin. Next I want to talk about food and cooking. So at the start of the trail I was carrying my cook set. This is my food bag. It's a Z-Packs food bag that they sell with their bear bagging kit and things like that. I bought it before the Te Araroa, and I used this bag for the whole of Te Araroa, PCT, and now the AT. It's definitely not waterproof anymore, but it stores food perfectly well. Inside I have a couple of op sacks. I used op sacks for storing my food for the whole Appalachian Trail. I actually used 3 different sets of op sacks. I damaged the seal on the first 2 sets. I did not hang my food at all on the entire Appalachian Trail. I stored my food by putting it into the odor-proof bags, sealing the odor-proof bag, and then storing it in my tent at night. I didn't have any issues with rodents, mini bears, nothing, or bears for that matter. I was very happy with that. I also carry a long-handled spoon. I picked this up out of a hiker box last year on the PCT, and I've been carrying it ever since. It's just a GSI Outdoors, I don't even know, long-handled spoon. It's great. This is my cook kit. I carried this on the Appalachian Trail from the start up until Shenandoah. And at Shenandoah I switched to cold soaking my food. So in here was an MSR Pocket Rocket 2 stovetop, a little piezo igniter. This is just a push button spark, really handy for lighting, and it weighs less than a lighter, so it's totally worth it. Gas canister, and then a Snow Peak titanium pot, and then a Reflectix pop crazy. I stopped carrying this because it was pretty much the last solid object in my pack, and it was nice to be able to get rid of that rigid shape. Also, it was really hot, so I didn't feel like I needed hot food on the trail anymore. There was definitely a few times near the end of the trail where I wished that I had hot food, but in saying that, I will probably just cold soak if I do a long trail again, so it worked out really well for me. I want to talk about shoes and footwear. So most of the trail, I walked in a pair of Bedrock sandals. These are the Pro 3D style of their sandals. They are the beefiest of the lot. I actually contacted Bedrock before setting out on this trip and asked them what they would recommend if I was to try and walk the whole trail in sandals. These are the ones they suggested to me. Super grippy. I found that I had more grip than people around me who were wearing shoes. I found them really comfortable. Those of you who watch my videos would know that I had some issues with my feet cracking, which originally I solved by getting rid of the sandals. Decided I didn't like that option, and then I would tape my feet when I got big cracks. I used 2 pairs of sandals on the whole trail. I wore the first pair for 3 months. I switched them out in mid-July after, I can't remember how many miles, a lot of miles, maybe 16 or 1700 miles on them. And these are the second pair I got. The comparison between the 2 pairs was quite shocking. The main thing was that the tread was missing, but also that these little sides were starting to rip through. The second pair are definitely not as good as the first. As soon as I started wearing them, the Velcro at the heel wouldn't stay shut, and so I stitched it shut with some dental floss to make that stay. About 100 miles into the trail, I had some really bad cracking on my heels, and I switched into some shoes to allow that to heal up. I was wearing these ones. They're Ultra Lone Peak 4s. I paired them with a pair of Injinji socks and a pair of Dirty Girl gaiters. And that worked really well, except for the fact that I don't like shoes. So no complaints, except for the fact that, yeah, shoes. Footwear wise, I also carried, at the start of the trail, a pair of compression socks. I wore them sometimes at night, sometimes during the day, for warmth, for comfort, and for the circulation benefits. I also carried, at the start of the trail, and then picked up again before the whites, a pair of merino wool socks, which I would wear to bed if it was a bit cooler. Time to talk clothing on trail. And I seem to have gone through a lot of different clothing while I was on the Appalachian Trail. I started out in a pair of icebreaker running shorts, very, very similar to these guys, but I managed to rip them all the way along the back where the pack and the shorts kind of interfaced. I sewed that up as I was going, but it ended up being too big, too much of a pain. I ordered some new running shorts online, but when they arrived they didn't fit me very well and I had to send them back. So at trail days I bought a skirt. Purple Rain adventure skirt, which I found very, very comfortable, but within about a week of getting this skirt, we got hit really badly by bugs. No-see-ums in particular, but also mosquitoes, absolutely destroyed my legs, and the combination of that and the risk of ticks on trail made me switch to a pair of long pants. So these are Toad & Co brand insect shield pants. They say that they are permethrin treated for 70 washes, which is a lot. I actually had some issues with them straight away with ripping, but Toad & Co were really good and sent me a brand new pair. This is actually the new pair I have. These have never been worn yet. I found these were really good at keeping the bugs off at first. By the end of the trail when I was wearing them, the mosquitoes would bite through my leggings. But I think they worked really well for ticks because I did not have a single tick on my body on the whole trail. So that was really, really good. I did find the tights very warm to hike in, and I picked up this pair of Nike running shorts out of a hiker box, and as soon as we were out of tick territory, I switched to the running shorts. Even though mosquitoes were still biting, they weren't nearly as bad as they had been, and I just needed to cool off, and I was really struggling with the heat, and so switching back into these shorts was really great. If I could have done the whole trail in shorts without bugs being an issue, I would have, but unfortunately the bugs on the Appalachian Trail are there, and especially the ticks, you really do need to be safe. And so I'm glad that I did wear the tights to keep the ticks off me, but at the same time it was very hot. Alright, t-shirts. I started the trail in a sleeveless icebreaker t-shirt. However, I stunk a lot at the start of the trail, and we wondered if that could have been because of not having any fabric under my armpits. And so I switched into this one, which is just a basic t-shirt. Both are icebreaker, 150 weight merino. I've pretty much always used merino for going tramping. I really like the moisture wicking properties, and I like the odor control. I find it really comfortable against my skin, and I definitely notice it doesn't smell as much as synthetic fibres. So that's hands down, I always go with merino. These are both Icebreaker brand. Icebreaker is a New Zealand brand, and near my house in New Zealand there's an Icebreaker outlet shop, so I can go there and get pretty reasonably priced Icebreaker clothing. The t-shirt is pretty threadbare now by the end of the trail. Other thing to think about with clothing is my underwear. I started out wearing Icebreaker merino underwear and bra. Through the trail my bra started rubbing on my back, and we weren't sure if it was the bra's fault or something else, but I replaced the bra with a Patagonia one. Didn't seem to make much difference, but I do love the Patagonia bra now. Decided not to show you guys my used underwear. Okay, rain jackets. So this here is a Outdoor Research Helium 2 jacket. I used this for the whole PCT last year, and then from Damascus onwards on the Appalachian Trail. An issue I had with this jacket at the end of the PCT was that it's quite short, and I found that my fleece and my puffy jacket would hang out the bottom of my raincoat, which meant that if it was really cold and really wet, my inner warm layers would get damp. So I thought with the amount of rain that we get on the Appalachian Trail that it might be beneficial to have a longer rain jacket. And so before starting I went to REI and picked up a Mountain Hardwear Exposure 2 jacket, which is a Gore-Tex jacket. I really liked that jacket. It was really comfortable. I liked the colours. It was really waterproof, except I ended up getting a lot of rain in the hood hole. And coming into Newfound Gap in the Smokies, we had some really bad weather, and I ended up absolutely soaked inside my rain jacket just from the water coming in through the hood. And at that point I kind of decided that it wasn't keeping me any drier by wearing that jacket, and also with heating up, maybe I wouldn't be wearing my jacket as much anymore, and the fact that the Mountain Hardwear jacket the Mountain Hardwear jacket also weighed twice as much as my Helium jacket did. So I got rid of my Mountain Hardwear jacket and switched back to my Helium, which I think was overall a good idea on trail. As summer progressed, I'd often just not even wear a raincoat when it was raining because it was so hot anyway. I'm moving on now to some of my warm layers. This is the fleece that I carried on trail. This is a Swazi micro fleece hoodie. Swazi is another New Zealand brand. I carried this fleece the whole trail. I like it. It has a zip up collar and a hood, and it has long sleeves with thumb holes and a long flap at the back. So it's really warm, it's got really good body coverage, and I ended up carrying this the whole trail. I also have my puffy jacket. This is a homemade puffy. It's 2 ounce per square yard, Apex. It's really warm. It's also very pink, and I don't have a thing for pink, it's just the fabric that I had available to me at the time. I got this fabric for $1 a metre. It was cheap, so I used it. I carried my puffy for the start of the trail. I got rid of it, I think, around Damascus. I'm not 100% certain, and I didn't bother getting it back as the trail progressed. I found I didn't need it. Next up is my warm layers. I have icebreaker thermal leggings and an icebreaker long sleeve top. Both are 200 weight icebreaker. I carried these at the start of the trail and then picked them up again in time for the whites. They are warm, cozy, nothing else to say really. I use these in combination with the fleece instead of using my puffy jacket later on the trail. And the last thing I was carrying is my wind pants. These are homemade, loose fitting wind pants. They are water resistant and wind resistant. They are not waterproof, they're not rain pants. I made these out of some really cheap fabric that I got at home. I wore them at the start of the trail and got rid of them as it warmed up. And then near the end of the trail, I got them back maybe in time for the whites. When I got them back, I found I'd lost so much weight that they actually didn't fit anymore. They were very baggy around the waist, but they still did a good job at keeping me warm. So yeah. Okay, gloves. So at the start of the trail, I carried a pair of these gloves. These are Ninja ice gloves. They're pretty cheap. They're made for people working in cool store areas, so they are grippy, insulated, waterproof gloves. I got rid of them after the Smokies when everything started to heat up. And then before going into the whites, I just picked up these guys, which were a light pair of polyprop gloves, and carried them the rest of the way on trail. I didn't really use them very much, a couple of times in the whites, and I think that was pretty much it. So this is my beanie. I carried this at the start of the trail. When it warmed up, I got rid of it, never got it back. It's just a MacPack fleece beanie. I really like it. It's got big ear flaps, and because I'm using a quilt, I can wear the beanie with the ear flaps at night, pull the drawstring up under my chin, and keep my head warm when it's cold out. I also carried this merino neck warmer for the start of the trail, and then later on I was carrying a lightweight buff, which I have no idea what I've done with it. I barely used either, don't know why I carried them, but I did. Other clothing things I carried, I had a town dress or town outfit. This is a romper that my mum made me, and I wore this one in town on the whole trail. I also carried most of the trail a P-rag. I picked this one up later on after I lost my P-rag, but a bandana originally used as a P-rag, but actually later used more as a sweat rag because I was melting. It was hot on trail. Also at the start of the trail, I was carrying a lightweight towel. I got rid of that really quickly and didn't bother getting it back. I want to talk really quickly about my poles. I think I'm unusual when it comes to pole use. I started the trail with these guys. They are Black Diamond Distance Carbon FLZ poles. They are, I think, 105 to 125 centimeters long. I use them every day, all day, no, I wouldn't say the whole first half of the trail, but for a while. when the trail started getting a bit more rocky, especially through Pennsylvania, and before Pennsylvania as well, I don't like using poles when it's rocky. I find I'd much prefer just to have my arms out and balance, and I don't like the idea of getting a pole stuck between a couple of rocks, so I kind of stopped using them. And then I managed to lose the pole tip from one of my poles, and at that point I stopped using them even more. And so I made the decision about a month and a half before we got off trail, so maybe 3 months into the trail, I sent them home. But I hadn't been using them for a long time before that. I was just carrying them, and then I reached the point where I realised it was stupid to carry my poles around, and I sent them home. It helped because Raiden and I were sharing a tent, and he was using his poles, so we used his poles for setting up the tent, so I didn't need them. And once I got rid of them, I was definitely happy with that decision. A lot of people swear by poles, and I was definitely one of those people. But now that I've spent a decent amount of time on trail, especially with a very light pack, I decided that I didn't want to use the poles anymore. I will definitely keep them, and I will probably use them on trails later. I love these poles. As far as poles go, they're very light, much lighter than my old ones. But at this point, I don't know if poles are still for me. Alright, the last things I've got to show you is all the little random things that I had. Start off with my fanny pack. Wore it every day, all day, everywhere I went. In here I kept my phone, a few other knickknacks, sunscreen, things that I needed handy. Yeah, it was really great. I loved it. It's a Cotopaxi fanny pack, and the way these are made, they're made out of scrap materials, and so every single one is different with all the different colours and zippers and things, so it's right up my alley. I really like this guy. This is my water filter. I carried a Mt Katahdin filter. I used 3 different filter cartridges on the trail. One I replaced because I got sick and I wasn't sure why I was sick, so I thought I'd change that just to be safe. I also popped the bag of one of them, so I had a pinprick hole in it, and replaced that during the trail. Really happy with this. The performance on these filters is great, much higher flow rate than other filters I've seen for a similar weight value. So this bag is most of the electronics I was using on trail. I'm just going to kind of start out. My cell phone is a Samsung Galaxy S7. It's 5 years old now. I started the trail with a life-proof case on it, and I kept that on for the whole trail. And by the end of the trail, the case was very scratched up. I took it off and I've replaced it now. I take photos with my phone, although on this Appalachian Trail trip, because I was doing so much filming with the GoPro, I didn't take very many photos with my camera. That didn't matter too much for me. I am able to extract photos from my videos, and also Raiden was taking a lot of photos, so I can steal his. I also used my phone for gut hook navigation, so that worked really well. Next, I guess, is my GoPro. My GoPro is actually being used to film this video, but it goes in here. I have a floaty handle on it, and this just used to live in the shoulder pocket on my pack right here. So anytime I wanted, I could just grab it out and film. I'm using a GoPro Hero 7 Black. I really, really like it. The footage I've had is great, and the stabilization on it is really good. I have had some issues with it not turning off when it's meant to turn off, which led to the battery being run down. I've actually been talking to GoPro just this morning, and they're going to replace my GoPro for me. So after I film the next couple of videos, I'm going to post that off, and then I should have a new GoPro in about 10 days. So I'm really looking forward to that. Next one, I guess, which is very important, is my battery pack. An Anker 10,000 milliamp hour battery pack. I carried one, Raiden was also carrying one. We didn't really share them, but we could have if we needed to. I also had to go with that cable for my phone and a cable for my GoPro. I also had an Anker wall brick with 2 ports on it. I carried this, and Raiden and I both used the same charger. so we just shared that when we got into town. A few other things that I used for my filming. I actually carried a 1 terabyte hard drive the whole way. Every night or every few nights I would get the data out of my GoPro, put it on my phone, I would edit at night on my phone, and then I would transfer the raw files and also the finished videos to the hard drive. Over the course of the Appalachian Trail I generated about 850 gigabytes worth of video footage and photos from my GoPro, so this was invaluable to me. The other thing that I used were these 2 little adapters. The black one here is a GoPro branded one, and this will put the SD card out of the GoPro to a micro USB which can slot into my phone. This one here goes from a USB to a micro USB, and I use this one to connect the 1 terabyte hard drive to my phone. But because of the case that I was using, the LifeProof case on my phone, the ends of these was too thick to go into the bottom of the case, and so I had to use an extension cable. So I was carrying all of those as well. I also started the trail with a basic set of headphones. I didn't listen to too much stuff at the start of the trail, but eventually I broke my headphones several times, and so at Walmart in Rutland, Vermont, I bought a new pair of wireless Bluetooth headphones, which I used for the rest of the trail. All up, GoPro, batteries, cables and everything, I ended up carrying about 2 pounds of electronic equipment, almost 1 kilogram of electronic equipment, which was a lot, and there was many times when I kind of cursed having that in my bag, but at the same time I really enjoyed being able to film and make the videos on this trail, so I think it was worth it for me in the end. This is the headlamp I used. It was a Petzl E-light. This is a 1 ounce headlamp. I only used it a handful of times on trail. It just lives in the front pouch of my pack. My theory is that if it's too dark to see inside my tent, then it's too early to get up. So I never really used it in the tent much. I carried a Cedar Summit head net the whole way, never used it. On the PCT I used it quite a lot, and I wanted to have it available to me if I needed it, but I never needed it. This is my emergency locator beacon. Pretty much this is a device, if I press the button it's an SOS signal. It doesn't have any sort of two-way messaging or tracking on it, it's just an emergency beacon. I carried it for the first little while on trail, but then with the amount of cell phone reception we were having and also the amount of people and towns, I decided that I didn't think it was worth carrying anymore, and so I sent it home. I do take it with me when trails are more remote or when I know there's going to be less people around. So this is my poop kit, bottle of hand sanitizer, deuce of spades trowel. This is my toiletry kit. I have toothbrush and toothpaste, sunscreen. I carry a razor and I carried the razor the whole way. I like to be able to shave my armpits and legs when I get to town, so I know that a lot of people don't, but each to their own. In there I also have a lighter, some dental floss, spare batteries for my headlamp, a little sewing kit, a tick key for removing ticks, however I never needed to do that, and a few different medications. This definitely got smaller as the trail went on, but that's approximately what was in there at the time that I was on trail. Also always carrying a lip balm, and my passport. And I think that's everything. Thanks for watching that, I hope you really enjoyed it. I'll include lighter pack links below for the different gear lists I used throughout the trail, so you can check them out if you want to know more about the weights of different things I was using. Also, if you have any questions about what I cover in this video, please let me know and I will do my best to let you know.